Thank you all for coming out tonight. I really appreciate your interest in this important issue facing the city of Waukesha. My name is Kevin Lahner, and I am the city administrator for the city of Waukesha. I have with me tonight Connor Kaola from Big Top Baseball, and Vern Stedman from Big Top Baseball, and Ron Gall, our parks director, is floating around here as well. Just wanted to establish a couple of ground rules for the evening. We are going to operate this with the city council rules that we have in place for this facility, and that is that we would ask that there's no yelling, applause, screaming, or anything of that nature during speakers or during while people are asking questions and that sort of thing. We really respect that. We want this to be an open discussion of important issues. And so please respect everyone's time as they ask questions and as we answer them. The format for tonight is I'm going to provide some information about the proposal. Connor and Vern are going to provide some information as well from their perspective, and then we're going to open it up for conversation and questions from the audience. So if you'd like to ask a question of anything that you see tonight, there's a form on this side table over here, and Gina will collect them, and she will call your name, and she'll create a queue for you so that you know if you're coming up next. Okay? So this is designed to be a public informational session, answer as many questions as we can as it relates to this proposal, provide as much detail as we can. So those are the ground rules for this evening. I really appreciate everyone coming out, and I just wanted to. I'll start with the information. So what we're talking about tonight is the White Rock Avenue redevelopment and Frame Park baseball facility improvements. And so one of the things I want to stress as I talk to folks is that I know that there's a lot of interest in the baseball stadium proposal, but this is a bigger project than just the baseball stadium. And it has a lot of things that are going into it, which is designed to benefit the city of Waukesha for the long term. And just as an introduction, in June of 2017, we had a discussion with the city council, and in that discussion there was a series of goals that were set for the upcoming years, and we're actually continuing that discussion right now with the city council. We'll be doing some strategic planning very soon, but we came up with 7 goals in that session, and the projects that we're talking about tonight touch on 4 of the 7 of those goals that were created back in June of this year. And a couple of those goals relate to making efforts toward diversifying our mix of businesses and focus on economic development, increasing the value of the city through significant redevelopment of distressed areas. And in that discussion, the area around White Rock and East Main Street was discussed specifically between the council and myself. Continue to develop techniques to address code enforcement issues and urban blight in our community. And then continue to work with partners to encourage additional affordable homeownership options like the Dunbar Oaks project, which is located over on West Avenue. And so the project that we're talking about tonight encapsulates 4 of the 7 of those goals that we discussed with the City Council back in June. The project area in specific that we're talking about, it has several project goals. Those goals include the redevelopment of the White Rock Avenue East Main Street area to increase tax base, remove urban blight and underutilized property, to create a community asset that will continue to the city's economic success, particularly in our downtown areas, and extending some of the success that we're experiencing downtown up the street, up Main Street and into White Rock. Create a non-tax revenue for the long-term benefit of the city. Creating non-tax revenue is a particular challenge that cities face on a regular basis. we have to deal with things like revenue caps and tax caps from the state legislature that limit our ability to generate revenues. And so creative partnerships that we can do to create non-tax revenues are very important. And when we're looking at those things, we have to take those sorts of things seriously. Another project goal, preserve and enhance Frame Park and its assets that are there and the attributes of that park. And lastly, to continue to provide access to the existing users of the facility and provide opportunities for additional community events and activities. And I think that you'll see in the proposal that I lay out tonight, we encapsulate all of those goals within this project. This is a rough outline of a potential redevelopment area within the city. There are several properties within this area that are ripe for redevelopment, which means that they're either underutilized today or they are vacant or in need of serious rehab. And this is an important aspect for the city. And for those of you that have been around and have heard about the issues associated with water, one of the things that is a consequence of us getting water through the Great Lakes Compact from the city of Milwaukee is that our existing borders are locked. We cannot annex any more property within the city of Waukesha. And so one of the things that we have to do as a city is we have to maximize the value of each and every inch of property within the city to the best of our ability. And that's one of those things that we're looking at. And so the baseball is a piece of that, but there's also extensive redevelopment efforts that are needed that have to occur in order for us to increase our tax base and to continue to provide the services that we need to provide to our residents. So where are we at today? We're reviewing several redevelopment projects in this area. There's a great effort by the Habitat for Humanity within this area where they're buying existing properties and tearing them down and rebuilding brand new homes for home ownership within this area. Affordable housing being created in this immediate area. And we're finalizing the agreement for Northwoods League baseball in Frame Park. Before I go on, I just want to make a note about why this project is coming forward and recognize that I have a professional responsibility, yes, as a city administrator, to look at these things objectively, but I also bring this project forward to you as a regular Frame Park user, who one of the reasons why I relocated to this position and into this city is because of the park system that we have. We love the park system. We use Frame Park regularly. The astute observer will notice that this is the formal gardens in Frame Park. I was in Frame Park yesterday, and if you take a close look, you'll see that there are golden-eyed ducks using the open areas in the lake in Frame Park right now, which are pretty interesting birds if you're a birder to go take a look at. They're there during the winter. So, yes, I'm a city administrator, and I'm using my professional responsibility is to evaluate this objectively and get the best possible deal to the city to present to the city council to consider. But I am also a citizen and a Frame Park user as well. So let's turn back the clock a little bit and talk a little bit about the history of Frame Park and then about what's happening today before we talk about the proposal itself. So baseball is the longest standing recreational use at the park. It was actually there before the park existed. One of the things that's important to note is that one of the namesake of the park was one of the founding members of the Waukesha Diamonds, a baseball team that competed against other local teams throughout the area. He was a baseball aficionado in this area. In the 1930s, Frame Park was one of the nice ballparks in the state of Wisconsin and included grandstands and bleachers that could seat up to 2,500 people at a time. Baseball has been a fabric of the park for a very long time, since before it was a park. This is an aerial and it's it's from the 40s, but this is an outline of the previous grandstand that was in Frame Park, and I've got another picture that shows a little bit better from a different perspective. So there was grandstands in Frame Park for many years, and it hosted baseball since before it was even a park. During World War II, the Milwaukee Brewers, who were a minor league franchise at the time, held spring training camp in Frame Park, and they held exhibition games at the facility. The St. Louis Cardinals in the 1950s used Frame Park for tryouts for professional players. This is a really interesting picture. This is the Brewers catcher hitting his second homer of the game in 1944 against the University of Wisconsin. Both home runs ended up in the Fox River, according to the caption. But if you look, you can look behind the catcher and the batter, and you can see the grandstands behind there in the bleacher areas that were there at that time. So let's talk about today and what's been happening more recently. So in 1990s, the Fox River Corridor Plan was approved, and the city, along with corporate sponsors and private donors, constructed the Riverwalk and made improvements to Frame and Bethesda Park. At that time, and it continues into today, the vision was for Frame Park to become a center for community events and festivals, and it has hosted community events and festivals for the entire life it's been in existence. It's 34.5 acres. What we know as the boundary of Frame Park today was 9 different properties that were purchased or donated that make up the area around Frame Park. So there were several properties that were purchased and others that were donated that make up that 34 acres today. There are 3 permanent buildings. There are a private vendor that rents kayaks, paddle boats, and paddle boards. And there are active uses in the park, and there have always been active and passive uses in the park since it became a park. So those include baseball, obviously, volleyball, bicycling, playgrounds, and kayak and boating. And the passive uses have include fishing, walking trails, the formal gardens, the Hobo Springs, which is a historical site for the city, and other uses. And so passive and active uses have existed together within that park ever since it was created back in the late 20s, early 30s. Since 1982, Fiesta Waukesha has been held in Frame Park, drawing thousands of visitors over the 3-day weekend. Oktoberfest began in 2016. Jamboree next weekend is occurring, with some of the events occurring in Frame Park. Trailbaker Marathon, the Riverwalk for breast cancer, the Badgerland ski shows occur in Frame Park during the summer, and National Night Out, a city festival sponsored in Frame Park, where if you're lucky, you can get some of the mayor's barbecue for nothing. So let's talk about some basics of the proposal as it relates specifically to the baseball field, and then I'll let these guys talk a little bit more. So basically, we're talking about a 20-year use agreement, a public-private partnership between the city of Waukesha and Big Top Baseball. 2,500 fixed seats that would be created as part of that, hospitality space, a digital outfield fence, indoor restrooms, concession space, retail office space, a full turf playing field, grass berms, dugouts, fencing, and press box. And the thing that I want to impress upon folks is that this is largely within the current footprint of the existing baseball field. None of the other uses within the park will be impacted by the project. It extends the boundaries slightly up to 9%, but the walking trails are not impacted. The formal gardens are not. The amphitheater, the playground. We preserve the existing uses in the park, and actually the project itself creates an enhancement and additional opportunities to open up the park for public use. The baseball team would hold up to 40 games per year. They would hold some level of soccer as part of the contract. And some of the provisions that are in the lease include an alcohol serving plan, scheduling meetings with user groups as well as the city, and a comprehensive parking plan. And I know there's a lot of interest in the parking, and I'm going to let these guys talk about that a little bit later. Carroll, Waukesha North, Waukesha South, and the current user of the facility would continue to play there. They've given priority within the use agreement between the city and Big Top Baseball. Current city events would continue to be preserved within the project. And so Frame Park, the baseball field today, is a limited use facility. You have to get a permit from the Parks Department to go out and get it. There were 73 baseball games played at that facility last year. That includes mostly is Carroll, Waukesha North, Waukesha South. I'm told there was one CMH game there and a couple other users. But largely, it's a reserved use facility. You just can't grab your buddies and go and play a game on Frame Park. And it's been that way for a very long time. You have to reserve it through the Parks Department in order to use it. The proposal that we're presenting tonight would preserve those existing uses and provide additional opportunities for public use. So from a financial perspective, Big Top would provide $500,000 up front and $150,000 per year as a base amount for their lease. They would contribute $25,000 to non-baseball improvements within the park. So they would contribute those to our parks fund that we could use for capital improvements. We could save them up and use them on a big project. We could use them the year that we receive them. We could partner with them to do a project as well. There would be additional, if there were additional events above our base amount within the lease, there'd be $2,000 fee. And the city would fund approximately $3.8 to $4.2 million up front as part of the deal. The lease payments plus redevelopment within the area would cover the debt expense to the city. And there's a couple of key things that we need that folks need to understand. We're using a tool called a tax instrument financing district to help fund for these improvements. And I'm going to spend a little bit on tax financing district 101. I'm not going to bore you. It's something that we have to use within the city for economic development purposes. And the way a tax agreement finance district works is that you establish a boundary, like the area that I showed you with the red line before, and there's a base value for that property. The base value of that property, the taxes generated from that property continue to go to the school district, the county, the city, and the technical college districts. Okay? New development within that area is used for improvements. And so new development creates new value, and those combined tax dollars are used to fund improvements within a tax increment finance district. So no general fund dollars are going into the project. The city will spend more tax dollars on Frame Park, general fund tax dollars on Frame Park over the next 20 years without the deal than with the deal that's being proposed to the city council. There'll be more tax dollars going into that facility without the deal than with the deal. And we can create, through this agreement, non-tax dollars for the continued maintenance and improvements of Frame Park. That's the type of thing that is a public-private partnership that benefits everyone, the city, the folks I'm working with here tonight. Again, thank you for coming out. This is our public involvement plan. We may add or move some of these, but right now, these are the scheduled meetings. So you're here. I don't have to talk to you about that. We have a scheduled Finance Committee meeting on January 30th at 6:30. We may add another one or move that to another date. We have another public information meeting at 6:30 on Monday, February 5th. On February 19th, there's a Park Recs and Forestry Board meeting, and it's currently scheduled February 22nd for the City Council. So these are all opportunities for you to learn more about this project. Want to talk a little bit about the Land and Water Conservation Fund grant. This has been an issue that's been raised. We received $28,000 in change in 1973 to build some trails and to make some improvements along the shore in Frame Park, and we are working with the DNR to meet those grant requirements. There's a provision within those grant requirements that we have to meet, and DNR is the entity that reviews those requirements. And so we have two possible paths. We can work with them to get approval for what we're asking to do, or we can do what's called a conversion. And a conversion is, for lack of a better description, a bureaucratic process that the DNR will facilitate, which moves the grant application from one location to another. The city happens to have an undeveloped park, Meadowview Park, where we have plans to do improvements in 2018 that meet those grant requirements. And so it's quite possible that we could simply move those grant requirements to the other park and meet the grant. There's some advantages to that, and there's some disadvantages to that. So that's the issue with the Land and Water Conservation Fund grant. There are some provisions within the grant that the DNR has raised concern about, and we have two paths forward that we're discussing with them. And I would just like to say the DNR has been a great partner in this discussion. They've been open. We've had a good discussion with them throughout the course of the project. So just really quickly, how will this project be successful? It's going to be successful if it's financially viable. We have a good financial plan that I think is going to work for the city in the long term. It's going to create a long-term asset to Frame Park. The city has a long history of creating assets that add to the value of Frame Park, that add to the experience for the park user. And we're asking the council to consider that again. Spurs economic activity. This is another of those goals where the project, taken as a whole, helps encourage more economic activity. Things like creating visitors to the community that will visit our restaurants in downtown and our shops in downtown, creating a tourist attraction that others don't have. And it's important to note that this market in general is one of the few that doesn't have a Northwoods League team. And within the next few years, if it's not going to be in Waukesha, it's going to be in another community around us. It's going to be in Pewaukee or Brookfield or Oconomowoc or somewhere else. We have a great opportunity to have it here in the city of Waukesha. And again, lastly, it preserves the Frame Park experience for the entire community. We believe that we've created a proposal that meets those goals. And just real briefly, this is about family-friendly entertainment in the park. It's about attracting new users to the park from a wide swath of demographics. Families and kids is a huge attraction. Also, millennials are a huge attraction. I noticed in some of the marketing material where the folks behind me have a successful franchise in Kenosha. Their facility was voted the #1 place on a first date, which I think would speak to the millennial population, and the #1 place for a family-friendly outing. And so I think that you hit two great populations that would be coming to our park, enjoying our facilities, and experiencing what Waukesha has to offer. This is the Kenosha facility. This is an aerial of Kenosha facility. It's a very similar in size and scope of what's being proposed in Waukesha. And I just wanted to point out that it's in a very similar place. There's even a railroad track alongside it. There are residences that are near it and other uses that are around it. Again, it fits into the fabric of that community. The folks in Kenosha love the Kingfish franchise. They own it. One of the anecdotes that I heard while on our tour when we were in the retail shop is that they had to get rid of everything that didn't say Kenosha on it. Well, not everything, but most things that didn't say Kenosha on it. The things that say Kenosha on it within the retail shop are the ones that sell the most in Kenosha. They have welcomed that team in their community. This is a facility in Wisconsin Rapids. Again, largely a residential area as well. And this is how it looks in Frame Park. So very similar facilities. Public-private partnerships have brought those projects forward and they've been successful, and they've been successful in communities throughout the state of Wisconsin. Just real briefly, folks that have these Northwoods League franchises in the state of Wisconsin love them. Wausau, there are literally houses directly across the street from this stadium in Wausau, and they talk about how it's been a great part of the fabric of their community. Fond du Lac, again, have talked about how it's a great part of their community. La Crosse has been there for a very long time. They view that franchise as a tremendous community asset. And Mequon, which the partners are a part owner of that as well. Again, talk about how the project helps to build community. And so the folks that have done this before have been telling us that it is a great asset to their community, that they've been successful, and that they would welcome them, and that we should welcome them into our community as well. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Connor and Vern and let them present some additional information.
Hello.
Thank you, Kevin. My name is Connor Kaloya. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Big Top Baseball. My partner, Vern Stemman, is the President of Big Top Baseball. I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight. This is great to see a lot of people here. We're excited to do a couple things. First of all, we're excited to tell you a little bit more about our background and kind of our vision for Frame Park. But more importantly, we're here to hear from you. We want to answer your questions. We want to engage. We want there to be dialogue. We have great respect for the park. We think it's a beautiful park and the most unique place in the community to put a Northwoods League franchise. And we have great respect for all opinions. We understand that not everybody here tonight agrees with our vision. And we're more than happy to hear those comments, sit down with people one-on-one, and see what we can do to work together to develop an idea and a vision and a stadium that work for everybody in this room. So our company is Big Top Baseball. We own and operate 4 Northwoods League franchises across the state. We're the largest ownership group in summer collegiate baseball. We started in Madison 18 years ago. Our second franchise was Wisconsin Rapids about 8 years ago. And then 4 years ago, we simultaneously started the franchise in Kenosha while we purchased the franchise in Green Bay. Last year, our group hosted 200 events across the state of Wisconsin, drew over 550,000 people to our events. In addition to the 4 Northwoods League franchises that we own, we're also in the event business. We run the City of Madison's summer fireworks show. We shut down a mile of state highway for 24 hours and put on the state's largest fireworks show. And then we also operate Breeze Stevens Field. It's an old historic facility in downtown Madison where we host concerts, do community events, soccer, football, and all kinds of other types of events. So a little bit about our franchises. Madison, like I mentioned, we've been there for 18 years. We lead the nation in attendance, average a little over 6,300 fans per night. We have a great thing going in Madison. We're very fortunate. If you compare us to any minor league team in the country, we rank in the top 10%. With that being said, we're not looking to bring that stadium, that experience to Frame Park. What happens in Madison wouldn't work here in Frame Park, and that's not what we're proposing or what we're discussing or what we're even thinking about. What we think would be more appropriate for the community and more appropriate for the park would be something more similar to our operation in Kenosha. We started in Kenosha 4 years ago. We have 2,144 seats. We average about 2,500 fans per night. We sold out 33 of our 36 games last year. We rank in the top 6 in the nation in attendance. We've had great success with that franchise since we started. Wisconsin Rapids is the smallest market in the 20-team Northwoods League. Yet every year we rank in the top half in attendance. We've been there for 8 years, going into our 9th year, and have really been embraced by the community there in the small town of Wisconsin Rapids. And as I mentioned, we purchased the team in Green Bay 4 years ago. It was struggling prior to us taking it over. We've been able to take it from 0 sellouts to selling out 17 of our 36 games in the last 3 years. And finally, Breeze Stevens Field. Just a quick story about Breeze Stevens Field. And Kevin mentioned that last year there were 73 baseball games at Frame Park. prior to us taking over Breeze Stevens Field in 2015, there was 38 events and about 8,000 people that came through that facility. Just this past year, we've been running the facility now for 2 years. This past year, we hosted 186 events and had 80,000 people through the gates. So our background and what we've done and what we'd be looking to do would be to get people utilizing the park and do it in a way that works with the neighbors and works with everybody involved to get more use of the park and get more people engaged using the park and enjoying it on a daily basis.
So I want to talk a little bit about our group and our background and really why we do what we do. I think, some people have expressed a concern that we're this big business coming in. Connor and I started in baseball in the North Woods League as interns. I was 19 years old. Connor was 20 years old. And we both had this vision of climbing the ranks and going on and maybe working in the big leagues or something like that. And what presented itself was a really unique opportunity in the minor league baseball and family entertainment world, where we were able to work our way through the ranks of the North Woods League and create some interesting partnerships. And Waukesha is the same thing. So we're kind of taking, we took a path, both of us, where we started out as unpaid interns and climbed the ladder to become partners in the ownership of baseball teams. It's really been a fun thing, and it's very different than like the Milwaukee Brewers, of course. You're not going to, as a 20-year-old intern, aspire to one day partner with Mark Attanasio and be a partner in the Milwaukee Brewers. So we've gone out and worked hard to build the business that we've built, and we're really proud of it, and we're proud of the opportunities we create for young people. Each one of our teams is run by a general manager that is based in the community, that becomes really the integral face of our franchise. And Connor and I have gone through those times, and we really pride ourselves on developing young people and providing them their first opportunity in a lot of cases to go out and prove themselves in the sports world. That said, this ownership group is a little bit different. The teams that we currently own are owned by myself, Connor, and Steve Schmidt, who's listed on here. Steve owns the Shoebox in Black Earth, Wisconsin, the largest shoe store in the Midwest. In Waukesha, we would be joined by Jim Kazmarek, who owns Capco, a metal stamping company based out of Grafton. He's the majority owner of the Lakeshore Chinooks that play on the campus of Concordia University. And he's a guy he's also a minority partner, owns 5% of the Milwaukee Bucks. And so he's got a guy that's got a little bit more of a connection to this part of the world than we do, and an interest in continuing to build baseball and in the community, that he's a part of here. Members of our group own 5 of the 20 teams in the North Woods League then, when we add Jim into the mix. We've won 4 out of the last 5 North Woods League championships. So, we're baseball first, for sure. We're really proud of the great baseball that we've turned out over the years, and we know how to win baseball games. And it's a competitive league. It's not easy to win on a consistent basis in this league. So we know how to do that part of it pretty well. And combined to bring about 60 years of experience to the operation. 2018 is the 25th year of the North Woods League. The North Woods League is really the premier amateur baseball league in the summer in the country. We take the best college baseball players from around the entire country, so we'll have players on a roster from Stanford to the University of Florida, who won the national championship last year, to the University of Illinois. Maybe Carroll would even have a player possibly on a roster. And we bring all these guys together in the summer. They play 72 games in about 76 days, so it's a lot of baseball. It's really kind of a baseball internship for these guys. You find out quickly if you have the right type of player that's going to potentially have a professional future. Pretty much every North Woods League game would be attended by at least 1 or 2 major league scouts, sometimes more, sometimes less, depending on who's playing on a given night. But these guys are legitimate prospects. Over 181 players have started their careers in the North Woods League and gone on to play in the big leagues. Eric Thames right now with the Milwaukee Brewers is one of the more prominent names with the Brewers, at least. Chris Sale, Max Scherzer, who won the Cy Young Award last year, is an alumni of the North Woods League. And so we've put out some really top-level baseball with the league. Waukesha would be the 11th team in the state of Wisconsin. Wisconsin has treated the North Woods League very well. It's been something where, lacrosse, for instance, draws maybe 2,700 fans a night, I think, right now. Lacrosse is almost the same as in St. Cloud, Minnesota, demographically and population-wise. The team in St. Cloud, Minnesota, draws about 1,500 fans a night. The North Woods League has really resonated well in the North Woods League. I think the combination of affordable family entertainment, high-level baseball, and the great sports fans that we have here in the state of Wisconsin have combined to make it a unique thing. And all of our players would live with host families in the community. This has been another nice part that's different from professional baseball, like the team in Beloit or the team in Appleton, the Timber Rattlers. Those guys are all professionals, and our players all stay with host families. So we normally have a 30-man roster, so 30 families in a given community would take a player from our roster in to their home for the summer, and they really become part of the family and part of the community through that connection. And I think I'll turn it over to Connor on the Y Waukesha.
Yeah, so so a couple things, and Kevin mentioned earlier, but if you look at the footprint of the North Woods League, going from the Dakotas to Michigan up to Canada, the premier market in the league footprint that does not have a North Woods League franchise is west of Milwaukee. And when you look at our different opportunities, different potential places to put a team, we think Waukesha is really the place you want to be for a variety of reasons. One, Frame Park is a great location, close to a downtown, but also at the same time close to the highway, easy for people to get to across the region. We think this is definitely, while it'll be based here in Waukesha, we definitely view it as a regional thing. And if it doesn't happen here, it's going to happen in the next 5 years somewhere else. We were one of 3 groups bidding with the North Woods League to get this franchise. We were able to secure that with the North Woods League, and there's interest to do this in this area. And if it doesn't happen in the city, it will happen somewhere else in the near future.
And I think an interesting thing about Waukesha, and Kevin kind of touched on it with his comments about Kenosha and the similarities we see. Kenosha is a very similarly sized community to Waukesha. It's growing. It's got some energy. And in that community, it didn't have quite an identity. There wasn't the thing that you really pointed to when you thought of Kenosha. They had been an auto-making community for a long time. That industry left. And it's funny, when we look at the different teams we operate in, these different communities around the state, there's a lot of interesting things to be learned. One of them is that in Madison, for instance, with the Mallards, we are the most successful summer collegiate team in the country. We're proud as we can possibly be of that. Draw 6,300 fans a night in our stadium that seats 6,700 people. It's cool. We're not the Wisconsin Badgers. We never will be in that community. We're always going to be second or third or fourth, probably, to their basketball and football and hockey and all those great things that they do in that community, and that's fine. We own summertime in that community in Madison, and that's all right. And we do just. In Kenosha, we are the Badgers. We are the biggest thing happening from an athletics perspective in that community. We think we have an opportunity to do that kind of thing with Waukesha. We think we have an opportunity to really provide a unique piece of this community that's something that people are going to rally behind and get excited about. Kevin's story about people, all they wanted to buy was stuff that said Kenosha on it. Like if we just put the team logo without the word Kenosha on it, nobody would buy that shirt. And we found out quickly if we put the word Kenosha on it, it sold, but that really told us a more interesting story, we thought, about community. And what these things are really about is a unique opportunity for people to come back together and see their neighbors and see their friends. And we think that, this is going to be something that could fit nicely into the fabric of summer in the Waukesha community.
So as we get into the next part of our proposal, we kind of want to talk about a couple things. Over the last few months, there's been a lot of information out there, and not all of it is correct. So we'd like to take the opportunity just to kind of, I think there's some confusion, some misinformation out there. We want to take the opportunity to just kind of clarify a few things and talk about the actual specifics and details of our proposal.
So the first thing we've heard a lot about is, comparison to our team in Madison. Again, we're really proud of what's happened in Madison. We never want to have another Madison Mallards. We don't want it in Waukesha. We don't want it anywhere. It's big. It's difficult to manage. It's a lot of work. We love it and it's great, but we found that we prefer to actually, as we move forward, to build smaller facilities. We think that's a better It's a better experience for our fans. We think it's more intimate. It's closer to the game. We've found that in the places that we've done that we've actually created better fans that come to more games and are really more connected to the brand that we're bringing out there. You know, we are proposing a 2,500 fixed-seat stadium with a total capacity not to exceed 4,000. That would include grass seating berms, some hospitality spaces, and some standing room probably as well. And so that's the highest that we want to do for any athletic use, basically, at the facility. And I think that this picture here shows the black line that you can kind of see on here outlines Simmons Field. So that's the seating area and the baseball field at Simmons dropped over Frame Park. And it's, I think, shocking to me, having spent a lot of time at Simmons Field and a little bit of time now at Frame Park as we look at this project, that everything that we have going at Simmons Field fits comfortably into the outlines of Frame Park today. And so we're used to operating in you know, a space similar to what Frame Park has available to work within. And then the next thing that I think is important to note is our intent for the use of the overall park. We understand that Frame Park is beautiful, and something that makes it an appealing place to go are those things. And we have no interest in modifying or changing anything outside of the footprint of the baseball stadium. We, as we kind of have shown here, the yellow space, the yellow outline shows the existing approximate square foot or outline of Frame Park, and the black line on the left-hand side of that image shows the space that we'd be hoping to grab onto to have additional space for traffic flow inside of the stadium. It's no more than approximately a 10% addition to the square footage that the baseball facility is currently taking up. We do not get any closer than about 240 feet from the formal gardens in the right field corner, basically back here. And there's actually a light pole back here already that's a little bit beyond the footprint that we actually would intend to use, but you know, it's really part of the field. And so that point is about 240 feet from the formal gardens. And you know, just to underline it again, the proposal and the improvements are exclusive to the baseball diamond. We have no interest in expanding beyond that.
A couple other things too to mention: that the bike path will be untouched.
Yeah.
The Rotary building will be untouched in the amphitheater. That all stays as is. We're really focusing just on improvements to the baseball field and want to limit any disruption to the rest of the park. There's concern out there that this will no longer be a public park. Frame Park has always been and will always be a public park. There were 73 games you played there a year ago, and under this proposal, in the installation of artificial turf, we believe that we can significantly increase that to get more people engaged, not just from a baseball perspective, but also from a soccer perspective, potentially lacrosse and other sports as well. On top of that, part of our proposal is that we would have 12 community use days. So on 12 days for at least 3 hours, we'd open the doors and it'd be open to the public to use any way they wanted. If you wanted to come kick a soccer ball, hit a baseball, throw a football, but it would be open to the public. And as of now, Frame Park does not have these open use days. In order to use the baseball field at Frame Park, you have to book a reservation. Moving forward, we would take reservations for scheduled events, but once a month, and we probably wouldn't do it during the winter months, but 12 times a year, 3 hours a time, open to the community, come on in, use it any way you want. This is a public park. We want to continue it being a public park. The other thing to mention, and I talked about Reese Stevens just the last 2 years, in our management of that facility, we've been able to significantly increase the number of users and then also increase the number of events at the facility. Another thing to talk about. There's been some concern about a private business coming into Frame Park. There's currently other private businesses operating in the park, and across the state and across the Northwoods League, this is a common thing. 7 of the 9 Wisconsin teams in the Northwoods League play in public parks. They play in municipally owned public parks. The other 2 play on private college campuses. But what we're proposing here is happening across the state, and we wouldn't be the first private business to be operating in a public park here in Waukesha. And then Kevin talked about this as well, but our proposed use of bringing baseball to the park, amateur baseball to the park, would not be inconsistent with the prior use of the park. Kevin mentioned that, the namesake of the park, Andrew Frame, actually was involved with the Waukesha Diamonds. There's been professional baseball there. It used to be a grandstand of 2,500 seats. Baseball's been played there for over 100 years. Now, with our proposal, I know there's previously pro baseball played there. This would be exclusively amateur baseball between the Northwoods League, Waukesha South, Waukesha North, Carroll, and other youth groups using the field. And then one other point to talk about, there's been a lot of comments that this could work in many other parks throughout the city. And unfortunately, we've done our due diligence. We've met extensively with the city and looked at other options. And for a couple reasons, this doesn't work. First of all, there's infrastructure at Frame Park. There's lights, there's netting, there's the footprint of a field, a lot of things that we can build off of. If you just went into a clean park, an open space, it would cost 2.5 times the proposed price of this project to start from scratch and build a Northwoods League facility. And the other reason that it doesn't work is that in order for this to work for the city, there needs to be an economic development element to it. In this location, this facility does that. There's an opportunity for the city to generate additional revenue through economic development in the neighborhood. Last couple things, there's a lot of talk that this is taxpayer dollars. Kevin mentioned previously as well that this is a tax increment financing. Our group would contribute $3.5 million over the term of the lease. Between our contributions and money being generated from additional economic development in the area, the current projection over the 20 years is that this project would cash flow positively over the next 20 years. And then there's also been discussion that 10 years ago when this was proposed, that this got voted down by the council. There was actually a 10-4 vote. This has already been proposed and approved once. And the reason it did not happen 10 years ago is that gentlemen at the time that proposed it did not really have a background doing this and also did not have the financing. We've been vetted thoroughly by the city, and we have both the background experience and the financing to move forward with this if this is approved.
All right. So I want to talk a little bit about the actual design of the stadium. We've done a lot of projects very similar to this over the last few years, from a rebuild of our stadium in Madison to our project in Kenosha. Our project in Kenosha actually won a national award from ballparkdigest.com that is kind of the standard for people that work in the baseball world. When we rebuilt that stadium in 2014, we won the award for the best ballpark renovation in the entire country in 2014. So we've done it. We've learned a lot about how to do it right. And we think that any ballpark starts, of course, with the setting. And as we've discussed, the opportunity to possibly pursue a facility in Frame Park is unparalleled. I think that this can become maybe one of the most unique baseball facilities in the entire state. The opportunity to interact with water, of course, is a very obvious one that we think would be fun for our fans. You know, we envision people out there in kayaks tracking down home run balls. We think that'd be fun and something that people would talk about and get excited about. We love the trails, the ability to possibly out in left field figure out a way for those bike trails and pedestrian trails to interact with the facility and create some viewing spaces out there, something that's actually happened at the Major League Baseball level with the San Francisco Giants in their stadium, where people walking along the ocean can actually come into the Major League Stadium for up to 15 minutes and watch a baseball game for free. We want to do something similar in left field. We have no interest, again, in modifying any of the bike paths or touching them in any way. But can we invite those people in to the stadium in some way and let them kind of have an opportunity to have a unique stop along their journey to wherever they might be going, assuming it's not coming to a game? We think that's a cool thing that is a unique to this location, unique to this community, and really unique throughout the entire state of Wisconsin and beyond. And as you kind of walk through the rest of the stadium, in left field, we would have a grass seating berm, probably for a capacity of 400 to 500 people on a given night. grass, great area for families to roll out a blanket and sit with their kids and watch a game. I love sitting in these areas with my family. I have a 10 and a 6-year-old at home, and this is the spot that my family enjoys watching a baseball game from. We want to think a little bit about everyone. Our stadiums will have something for everyone. We don't want to just focus on kids. We're going to have something for kids for sure, but we're going to have something for that baseball enthusiast that the number one reason they want to come is to sit behind home plate and overhear the scouts talking about the star of the player on the field that night. We want to create that experience. We want to create experiences for companies to be able to do private parties. We want to have something that's going to be an affordable ticket package for kind of the Joe fan to come out and enjoy a game and everything in between. And we're going to be super versatile with how we do those things. So as you go behind home plate, the idea would be to have a concrete seating bowl, probably made out of Spancrete, a good Waukesha product here, of course, that would have major league quality stadium seats with armrests and cup holders and a folding seat, nice amount of leg room. We try to build our stadiums with a little extra leg room. The tight footprint might adjust that or impact that a little bit. We'd have 2 concession buildings with restrooms in them behind home plate. One on the first base side, one on the third base side. The one on the first base side ends up being a touch bigger because that's probably where our team office is and a potential retail store would be located. They're basically 2-story buildings. However, one of the nice features of the natural landscape at Frame Park, as I'm sure you know, is that the baseball field's about 6 feet lower than the actual parking lot is, which allows us to kind of recess those buildings, especially on the first base side, down about a half a story below. So actually, you're only really going to see an exposure for about 1.5 stories of what we would build. But we still get the impact of really having the amenities that a modern baseball facility would really need and require. Another really interesting feature, we think, is trying to tie it into the interesting history and the architecture of the community. One piece that we've heard a lot about as we came into the community was the Spring House. The grandstand cover behind home plate is meant to evoke that feeling and that look. It's not meant to be a replica in any way, but it is supposed to be reflective of that style of architecture and something that we feel is consistent with the overall look and feel of that entire park that would work really nicely. In right field, we would have a party space for companies and private outings that would be basically right behind the right field wall and kind of wrap around the right field corner in general terms. I think another kind of interesting feature that we would be proposing for this facility is how we would do the scoreboard at the outfield wall. There's an existing scoreboard there today. Our intent would be to continue to use that scoreboard that is there today. And we would, instead of doing a traditional outfield wall that you've seen at all kinds of baseball stadiums, we would actually make the entire outfield wall digital. And the nice thing there is it allows us to, on games that or on days that the team is not there, to turn it off. And so I know a lot of people are concerned about over-commercializing the Frame Park and having all these signs visible all the time that are going to not look great. We don't want that either. And in fact, what we would do is during events, we would turn on the outfield wall and we'd have prominent signage, certainly, for our advertisers and our partners. We'd also use it for part of our game presentation and kind of have the fun video board stuff that you might see at a major league game. But instead of building a 40, 50-foot tall board, we're just going to put it right in the outfield wall. We think that's more in keeping with the concerns that the neighbors have already expressed to us about views of the river and things like that. We want to celebrate the river. The last thing in the world we want to do is obstruct anyone's view of the river. We want to bring that into our park as much as we possibly can and make it something that's an interesting piece that really drives the fan experience.
A couple other notes quickly on the design. One, we learned a lot from this process 10 years ago, so we've taken a lot of that feedback into account, keeping the stadium as low as possible, keeping the seating bowl low and close to the facility. A couple other things that we've learned. One, we want to make sure that the facade of the structure ties into the surrounding park. We want to do our best to preserve any sight lines from White Rock, to preserve the sight lines of the Fox River and the rest of the park. That's why the proposed facility has such a low profile. And Vern mentioned, any other Northwoods League park these days has a massive video board towering over the field. That's not a part of our proposal and proposed plan. So as far as the usage in the the field users, Waukesha North, South, and Carroll all play there. They would all continue to play there. There'd be no disruption in their schedule. We've met with each of them. We continue to work with them to accommodate them, make sure their games have priority. The majority of the 73 games played this past year were those three teams. We'd want to preserve that. Their seasons work well with ours. We've met with them, and our schedules can coexist. In all of our facilities across the state, we coexist with other high school teams, college teams. For example, our facility in Kenosha hosts over 180 baseball games a year. We play only 36 of those. So we like the idea. It's a community facility. We want to continue to coexist and work with those community teams. Then the last thing to kind of touch on is parking. I know parking is a concern. Candidly, in all of our facilities, parking is a concern. And if you're at a facility where people want to be, parking is always going to be a challenge. And we're very confident with our background, what we've been able to do in the other markets. We've got the experience to sufficiently manage parking here. A couple things. First of all, in the park, we'll reserve spaces in the park for general park users. We'll reserve spaces in the park for those going to an event at the Rotary Building, and spaces in the park for any guests at the Schutze Building. So that'll come first. The parking lot will have staff, signage. We'll work hard to ensure that anybody that wants to just be a general park visitor or visit the Schutze Building or the Rotary Building will be able to do so. We've identified over 1,000 off-street spots in the neighborhood. So those are off-street spots, not spots on-street, off-street spots. We work in all of our other facilities with local business owners, nonprofits. We secure their lots. We staff their lots. We park cars in their lots. We provide insurance for their lots, and we clean them after every event. That's something we're confident we'll be able to do here. Like I said, every market that we're in, we have parking challenges. Candidly, out of the 5 facilities we operate, there's 2 or 3 that are a lot more challenging than this one, and we've successfully been able to manage that with both our neighbors and with the city. Keep in mind, too, that our proposal cannot move forward without an approved parking plan from the city. The city council would have to approve any parking plan.
And as we identify challenges like parking, our history and our track record has shown a consistent ability on our side to understand those problems that come up from the discussions like we're going to have here tonight that we've been having for the last several weeks with people around the community. We want to respond, and we want to find common ground, and we want to work with the community to address these things. We talked about parking. One of my proudest stories, one of our proudest stories, I think, as a company is our team in Kenosha. They were really concerned about parking. Kenosha parking is probably a little bit worse, honestly, than what we would be, potentially inheriting at Frame Park. And as we came into our first summer, the city council was pushing us on it. The community was pushing us on it. And, we decided to turn it into a positive. The name of our team is the Kingfish. We play off the Elvis the King feel quite a bit with that team. The name of our mascot is actually Elvis, and he wears a white jumpsuit from time to time. And actually, if you ever go to a Kingfish game in Kenosha, you'll find on the streets on Sheridan as you come in, you'll find on a given night 8 to 10 of our employees dressed up as Elvis, pointing people to the right place to park. Connor, you got the. We took parking and made it fun. In fact, one night our employees weren't dressed correctly, and we got complaints the next day from our fans saying, "Hey, I didn't see the Elvis or the Elvi, I suppose, out on the street directing traffic." And at the end of the year, we did a survey. And I think 85% of our fans surveyed thought our parking service... 93? Yeah. Sorry. 93% said our parking options and service was above average or beyond what they expected. And we're proud of that. And to this day, the city council in that community, who's very responsive to their community, just like the city council is here, hasn't even asked us about parking because they've understood that there is a way to handle it, and we've got a good model on how to do it. So with that said, I think that we want to...
Yeah, one last thing. Our contact information's here, our cell phone number, email. We want this to be a collaborative process. If there's concerns, if there's things we can address, we want to sit down. We've already started that process with a handful of people in the neighborhood. We want to sit down with you. We want to see if we can address your concerns. This is how we've had success in our other markets. If our neighbors are not happy, there's no chance of us having success. So I want to thank everybody for coming out here tonight, and we're excited to open up to questions and continue the dialogue.
Yeah, just to Just a reminder about protocol. So if you would like to ask a question, we're here. We'll stay as long as folks want us to stay. Gina has a timer, so we can get through as many questions as possible. And so fill out a form. She'll call you up, and we'll go proceed. And again, just a reminder that we're following Common Council rules. So please hold applause or other notes of affirmation as you go through.